welcome to the ICT Pulse podcast. I'm Michelle Marius, your host and the editor and publisher of ICT Pulse, the online platform where we discuss ICT issues from a Caribbean perspective. In this episode, we have a bit of a twist. We're interviewing two tech entrepreneurs instead of the typical one we have been doing to date. Allow me to introduce the guys behind Rovika Inc., Dennison, Daley, and Manish, Valechha, who are based in Montserrat. Rovika has recently been gaining some prominence due to Exotrack, a document management software application designed for cabinet officials and currently is being used by the Montserrat and British Virgin Island governments. However, the application could be considered and possibly procured by other governments as a more efficient, effective, and green option to the reams of paper that typically would be used. The duo has also created other software applications that are currently being used by the Montserrat government and, again, may be useful in developing countries and small island developing states, which tend to have similar constraints and vulnerabilities. So in this episode, our discussion with Dennison and Manish covers areas including what Rovika is and how it has evolved over the years, some of the challenges of having government as a client, why the two co-founders still work well together, and what might be in store for Rovika in the coming years. Gentlemen, welcome to the ICT Pulse podcast.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for having us.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. Talk to us about Exotrack. What is the application about, and what makes it unique from other document management solutions out there?
Exotrack is a cabinet document management system, as you would have outlined. It's designed specifically to manage the cabinet processes. And because of that specificity, it means that it's way more efficient as opposed to having been adopted from something else. So it takes into consideration all the different components, all the different requirements of that environment and puts it into one central location.
Understood. So is it a question, therefore, and I don't know, I would trust that you all would have researched it, that most cabinets operate along the same structures and procedures, therefore facilitating the wider application of Exotrack outside of Montserrat and BVI?
Like most of the Caribbean, you find that we have a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of differences. Just those little fine little areas where you have those unique little twists where it might be just in the workflow or the different little processes that documents need to go through before they can be approved. These are the little intricate little things that we have to deal with. But generally, we tend to find that there are a lot of similarities in the approaches.
Right, and I trust that you all have the means to at least customize it to ensure that it's a good fit for governments.
Yes, definitely we do.
Great. Now, just noting that in addition to Exotrack, you all had developed a number of different software applications. I read about Calypso, which I think was some voting software that was used for like cultural competitions. I noted that you all also had like a driver's license and vehicles information tracking system, and you all also developed an online visa system. What are the status of those applications?
Well, actually, Telstra was one of our first applications that we developed as a company. Dennison was part of the Calypso committee, so every year he used to organize the events. And one day he just came to me and said, you know what, we need a better way of calculating all the scores, and instead of taking 30-40 minutes, we need something that's instant. So, we sat together and, within a few days came up with a solution. This was in 2012, and we tested it out the same year, and it worked so well that it's been used ever since. Mm. And, we had to modify it for like the teen pageants as well. So they have their own version.
Great. I noted, as you rightfully said, I've noted that with some of these competitions, sometimes you're waiting for 40 minutes, an hour for all of the scores to be tallied, by which time, the audience is just completely bored and you sort of just lose everyone in the process. So is it being used primarily in Montserrat, or has it taken off in other countries as well?
The software, we've not done any real marketing on the wider region yet. It's something that we have been looking into. And it's primarily because of the efficiency that it brings, but it also brings about a change in culture at the management level of the competitions.
Mm-hmm.
Because as Manish alluded to, because I was the chairman of the competition, it was easier to adapt and adjust to the software, because there wasn't a large group of persons who needed to be convinced. So because of that, we're going to have to work with the different organizations who would be interested, and they would have to be the ones to determine, how willingly they would adapt to that change.
Okay.
Because when the results come out too soon, some persons feel that, it's like, something has to be wrong there.
Mm.
So it comes with those challenges.
I guess the wait is part of the process as well.
Some persons feel that.
And I think one thing we have realized for the past few years as well is that, if you bring out the results too early, you're kind of losing some money as well, like the bars and everything really quickly. So you kind of have to kind of balance everything.
Definitely. So what about the vehicle and driver's license system as well as the online visa system? Are those still open, available, being used?
So the online visa application system is currently in use by the government of Montserrat. It's been up and running since almost 2012 as well. As for the vehicles and driver's license system, it's like the production has finished. We're waiting for a few legal frameworks to change in order for it to be fully implemented.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. And how does Rovika sort of fit into that? All right, it's the company, but what is Rovika?
Well, it has changed. Initially, we were an IT company that, really did everything. We'll fix your computer for you. We'll order a brand new computer, fix your iPad and all that stuff. But, we refined that to just software development at the moment. We still do the other things here and there, but it's mostly software development. And then in the last, year or two, we have even further refined that, mission to basically help companies or governments to rethink the whole process altogether. So we're now considered we consider ourselves a consultancy that develops digital solutions.
Interesting. Actually, that leads me to a whole set of questions. But first things first. So since Rovika is about 12 years old, and certainly it has evolved, was there ever a time you thought that the company might be failing, which probably facilitated some of the pivots that you all have done? But can you just share with us a situation and how you all turned it around?
Well, one of the benefits we've noticed as a small company is the fact that we were not driven by the financials of it.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the failings, we've not really experienced that, in that we were more adaptive. So if for example, a venture is not as profitable or as beneficial as we would have expected it to be, then we had the ability to pivot, because as Manish alluded to, we were not just focused on software development at the onset. We thought about, basic services that were lacking or could have been further developed in the community. So, for example, computer repair. We did some teaching, mentoring, and so forth, network development and implementation. So all of those are areas that we ventured into to refine our abilities personally. So, for example, some of the challenges we would have faced would have come from, for example, VITs, where the software solution would have been developed, but then you have to sometimes wait for legal frameworks and sometimes even the clients to catch up to you as to where the technology is and how willingly they're able to adapt to some of the changes that would be required for them to fully utilize and see the benefits of the solutions.
Definitely. And also, so there's another question, because since from what you say, there's a sense that Rovika tends to focus more on governments and helping governments. And from what I gather, the company has benefited from grant funding, for example, from the Montserrat government to build some of the applications that it now has in its stable. But talk to us about some of the challenges of having governments as a client and some of the lessons that you all have had to learn along the way.
So I think it's very important to note that one of the reasons why government is kind of our main client, because government is the biggest employer and the biggest entity on the island. It's I think it employs almost 50% of the workforce, or probably a bit more. In terms of the private sector, it's quite small. A lot of them like very adverse to technology because there are a lot of older folks who are running these businesses, and because of small economy, there isn't enough finance available for these private companies to actually make a jump into the IT sector, or sometimes there's no incentive for them to jump in it as well. But in terms of the challenges with government, it's just like any large organization, it's a big entity, so there are a lot of stakeholders involved, and each stakeholder has its own goals, has its own budget. Sometimes they have their own political agenda. So all those things, are like hindrances that either slow down the process or prevent you from accomplishing an idea, because then, an idea will kind of remain an idea. And the visa application is a clear example. It was initially a brainchild of a different representative who had a friend who wanted to come from China, but he had to go through this long route in order to get a visa to come to Montserrat. And, he was actually pushing this rather than the government. And a lot of stakeholders in the government were like, what, this cannot be done because we don't have the legal framework, or, there is always this, roadblock. But then the premier at that time, along with DFID, said, what, we need to do this no matter what. And it just happened. So unless you have this driving force, whether it's the government or any particular entity, nothing generally tends to happen.
Okay, so and in terms of lessons and how then do you navigate your relationship with governments? I guess since you all are now also in a relationship with the government of the BVI.
I think it's always important to realize that every client is unique, and each client should be treated as a client. Each should be independent of the other in terms of your dealings, in terms of your expectations, in terms of your approach. And I think that level of respect, once granted, allows for a more open and understanding, more efficient understanding and approach. Because, for example, some of the lessons we learn as a company, whether it is in terms of contracts, it is in terms of timelines and frameworks, it means that every new client benefits from an even more efficient company in terms of dealings and approach. So it's really the experience. It comes down to the experience that you gain over time and how you look at each interaction and what you take from it, how you adapt your business processes. And I think that's the key.
Definitely. Okay, so talk to us about being an entrepreneur in Montserrat. I realized and noted that Manish spoke about the fact that government is the largest employer and essentially the largest client.
Yeah, so that's correct. I mean, being an entrepreneur is it's quite challenging. You're already faced with so many limitations. A small population, which means a small economy, and then government being the only employer and biggest entity. So, sorry, you kind of lost my train of thought there.
No problem. Okay, so Dennison, jump in and probably talk to us. And what has been your experience to date, and what do you think about the country's startup environment, startup culture?
Well, the good thing about being an entrepreneur is the fact that you are not as limited in scope as when you're employed and you are working towards someone else's vision.
Definitely.
And I think that is one of the primary benefits of Rovika as it is. Being a small entity, being that we are friends and we are business partners, we're able to rationalize a lot more efficiently in terms of business ideas. Because, for example, Exotrack, Calypso, and all these other solutions, these are things that we've been speaking about since 2009. And perhaps even before that, you understand. And as we became more efficient and more, capable, we started rolling out some of these applications, having them on the table, even if they were not fully presented to the public as yet. So in terms of the startup environment in Montserrat, like every small community, because Montserrat at this stage can be considered a community for most of the larger islands, it's important to understand that you're not limited to the environment that you're functioning in. And I think that at some point in time was part of our slowdown in that we were not as willing to get our feet wet in the region as we are now. Because we primarily looked at the scope of Montserrat, and we felt, we need to try and make sure that we have things solid here first before we start looking at other ventures and so forth. But as we started to get more experience, as we started to interact with more persons, we started to realize that, listen, we're actually able to produce something that has appeal in other areas.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so basically, what Dennison said, because we're such a small society, that has its own set of challenges. One of the biggest things is resources, whether that's human or financial resources. It's not like I can just get up and if I'm looking for a designer, I'm looking for extra hand to come and help me with a project, that I can just go to someone. It's very difficult to actually bring someone on overseas because, that person might not understand the local culture or the context of that particular solution that we're developing because they don't have the one-to-one interaction with that problem. So, that's human resource definitely a problem. And then financial as well. It's not like if you're starting a new company, you can go to the bank and tell them, you want to borrow $10,000 to start a business. They will outright tell you no, or they'll come back and tell you, do a business plan. And then obviously when you look at a business plan for 5,000 people, it doesn't make sense. It's not going to work, or it takes like so many years just for your business to become profitable to a certain scale. And also, you realize in the Caribbean and also in Montserrat is you don't have this investor kind of mentality that you could say, I'm going to go to this person who, lack of a better word, say has money to invest into a company and say, I'm going to give them 10% of the company for X amount of dollars. We don't have that culture as yet. And that's something that we need to grow. And it's actually a problem on both sides where people with money don't want to invest. And then people who want the money don't want to give up a piece of the pie of the company. So there needs to be a balance that needs to take place in order for things to grow, or companies to scale.
Those are so true. As you're talking, I'm nodding my head. But then now, so how has Rovika been able to succeed with all of those odds? I mean, you both are working full-time in the company. This is not a side hustle for you, as I interviewed Linda Diaz of Bodio recently, and she shared with me that because of the small private sector, for most people, their foray into entrepreneurship is as a side hustle. So what has been the keys to your success so far?
I think the most important characteristic of our approach is that we've always looked at the company as being a potential, how should I say this? We've always seen the company as a beacon, not just for us, but for other young people in the community, trying to encourage them not to look at government as a primary employment. It's a passion, it's such a passion to us that we want persons to realize that, yes, the government is the primary employer, but beyond that, you have the ability to take something small and build it out into something. Because a lot of persons spend hours with their friends talking about different things, looking at different things. But if they're able to take those hours and put them into something that has some form of benefit that they can derive from later on, I think that is why we approach things the way we do.
I think also from a key aspect, just basic business practices, you want to always keep your costs down, and you want to, increase revenue. So you do what you have to do in terms of sales, and you do what you have to do in terms of cutting costs and expenses. It's, it's a good thing that in terms of the IT sector, that the incentive or the cost towards starting a business is very low. All you need really is, a computer and internet.
Yes.
There are so many resources available online. If you want to become a chef, there's so many recipes that you can follow. If you want to become a writer, if you want to be a movie creator, there are so many free resources these days online that, people ask me which university I go to. I told them University of Google.
Yes. Excellent. So let me ask, besides the two of you, what's the size of the team you all are leading?
So, it's basically both of us that's part of the team, but we do have, a group of friends and colleagues that are in the various sectors of the IT industry. And we do call upon them to come help us on, and pick their brains on a few projects here and there.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I probably had thought you would have fleshed out a team by now, but I also appreciate being lean and probably you're not yet at a point where you need to probably have, full-time support. But in the spirit of keeping it real, and since you all are friends and business partners, why do you think you two work so well together?
Well, for me, I think, we share the same goal, which is basically like to enhance the day-to-day life of, ourselves using technology and innovations. Anything that we look at with a fresh pair of eyes and say how we can get it done better. So, we have this kind of connection between that and, with our conversations. We're also into sports. So, we have that few common similarities.
Mm-hmm.
And, but that also means, we are both very opinionated and very stubborn at times, which, means that we do lock horns on a number of things, sometimes even the most silliest of things, but at the end of the day, it's nothing personal. We fist bump and see each other the next day.
Okay. And then now, so what might be your pet peeves though, of working with each other? None?
I believe I think most of it is stubbornness.
Okay. Okay, and
We're both opinionated. Sometimes I'll have a different view of things, and because I think one of the key things for me is Dennison comes from a government perspective, because he worked for the government before, and I'm mostly from the private sector. So, he's very uptight about certain things. Well, I'm a bit loose, and I can do things relatively quickly and make decisions, not regarding a lot of implications that can happen. So he'll write letters a certain way, with government language, and I'll be very, like I'm speaking to you. I'll just write my emails just like that. So there are little things, and in terms of details, that it shows that I'm from a private sector, kind of unpolished, and you come from government sector, hello sir and all that stuff.
Definitely. But that almost sounds like a strength as well, because clearly you bring different things to the table. So I really appreciate that, just from the perspective that, it's difficult to get a business off the ground, and oftentimes you need a partner, a co-founder or something. But as the business evolves, it is not uncommon for there to be some sort of falling out, and eventually people having to go their separate ways, and the business might suffer in the long run. But luckily, you all seem to be able to navigate those challenges, whatever they might be.
Yes, I think it's the fact that we're not personal. We've never been personal about our interactions. So in everything business-wise, because again, it's two of us making a decision, we disagree about something, we spend 15, 20 minutes, we discuss it. And at some point in time, someone is going to say, well, okay, whatever it is, and we work with the ramifications, and if there are benefits, then there are benefits. But generally, it's an understanding that it's not, at the end of the day, it should not be personal. Your disagreements should strengthen you, and that is the approach we take. You might be wrong about something, I might be wrong about something. Okay, how do we then come to the point where we have something that we can work with? And because of that difference in perspective, we're able to find a common ground, a middle ground that takes into account, for example, as he spoke about, the more governmental approach and then the more private approach. You understand? So because of that balance, we've been able to navigate quite well. And we always say, at the end of the day, one thing does not affect the other.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're winding down now. Just a few more questions. So moving forward, how do you see Rovika evolving? Because I'm wondering whether or not I should talk about Rovika or talk about the specific applications that you all have developed. So, for example, Exotrack. Where do you see Rovika in the next 2 to 3 years?
I see Rovika as a regional IT company having the ability to call on resources across the region, because quite often we tend to look at ourselves as independent countries. And for me personally, I think that we are one single market, in that if we are able to call upon our counterparts to develop the solutions we want and we need, we are more efficient as a market. We're more efficient as a people. And it means that our resources are able to remain within our region, and we are better able to employ them for our benefits. Now, in addition to that, I see us also having the ability to call upon our community, within our community, a lot of the younger ones, because that's part of our intention to mentor them, to develop the skills that even at the school level, we're able to have more persons coming out in the IT industry, because within the next 4 to 5 years, everything will be IT.
It's already IT. 4 to 5 years, it's already IT. We just don't realize it.
That's true.
So, Dennison and Manish, I mean, here it is that you seem to have a regional aspirations. But even for me trying to prep for this interview, I found it difficult to find information about Rovika and the various products online. And even for yourselves, I'm just hoping that clearly these things are going to be put in place. I know that, it's a small micro business and you all have primarily been working in Montserrat. But now that you have regional aspirations, tell me, please, that we should be seeing some things online about Rovika, Exotrack, etc. I'm hoping by the time I publish this podcast.
I like that question. And it lends itself to what we've been basically speaking about, which is we were always focused on products. Our drive, our motivation was always about creating and developing solutions that had an impact and were efficient in functionality and approach. And because of that focus, we did not want to get distracted by, the presence so much so. But I will let Manish expand now on the future of our footprint as we're now looking at the more wider market and becoming more visible.
Please.
So like Dennison said, for the past years, we've been concentrating on just developing products, which is like the day-to-day business activities, and I think as a small company, it's the same thing for everyone. For example, if you start a bakery, you're mostly concentrating on baking because that's what you're passionate about. But then, we realize that there's all these other aspects of the company that, we need to grow and invest time and money into. And, that's something that we have just started doing. And hopefully in the next few months, you'll start seeing, a web presence for us. You'll start seeing, our blog, for example, that shares some of our ideas and ideology within Montserrat and the Greater Caribbean on ICT-related initiatives and stuff.
I am so hopeful that you all put that together because I do think that Rovika, what it stands for, the products that it has already developed, they probably, the scope is not limited to the Caribbean, but so many developing countries around the world that are in the same boat as us in the region, or probably even worse, and could just benefit from having a company that understands what they're going through and what the challenges are of being a small island developing state or developing country. So I'm really going to hold you all to that in terms of getting your online presence in short order.
Yes, and if we could just allude to the fact that as part of that approach, we sponsored the local cricket team for the Leeward Island cricket competition last year. And that had a massive reception, just in terms of the designs, the logo and so forth. And we worked along with Mr. Springer from the board. And, those are the initiatives that we were focused on, having a presence in the community first and expanding outwards. So definitely we're going to be looking at having that visibility out there.
Excellent. And just touching on Exotrack, since I guess this is your most prominent product these days, have other Caribbean governments expressed any interest in it?
We've discussed with one or two other governments. However, we're going to be a bit more aggressive, I should say, in our discussions, in our advertising and in our communications with them, especially as BVI is more of a proving ground.
Definitely.
I think, and having now had that proof of concept applied in another area and having a very good response to it, we are now able to take the product more confidently to other islands and be able to discuss with them a method going forward.
Definitely. Yeah, I guess Montserrat and BVI almost like your beta testing of Exotrack.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And for you personally, I guess you both personally, I guess, what does the future hold for you too?
Well, for me, it's like I said, we cover like software solutions. We're looking at things differently these days. Every little problem is like, how do we solve that using IT? And in the Caribbean, there's like so much areas for disruption. I think in the next few years, that's coming from us and me specifically, you will see a lot more products geared towards the general consumer as opposed to governments.
Excellent. Any want to drop any hints as to what sort of products we might get?
I think one of the things you can probably look forward to is a fintech product.
Okay, very good. Dennison, what does the future hold for you?
For me, as we move forward, I see myself, looking to be more efficient in the turnaround of the products and the ideas that we have, being able to build a team further and spend more time, looking at new markets, looking at new opportunities for the organization and moving Montserrat forward.
Well done. Yes, I mean, those are just, excellent goals to have in terms of trying to build on the business and certainly to be part of that whole transformation that is occurring both within your operation, I guess the wider Montserrat community regionally and perhaps even globally as well. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm just so grateful that we have had a chance to connect and for you to just share with us your experiences in developing Rovika as well as the various applications and your journey to date.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for having us again.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the ICT Pulse podcast. You can find links to some of the things we talked about on our website, ict-pulse.com. If you like this episode, please show your support by leaving us a review on iTunes, as it will help others find the show. You can email us at info@ict-pulse.com or drop us a note on our Facebook page, facebook.com/ICTPulse, or via Twitter @ICTPulse. We hope you'll join us again for our next episode. Take care.